Dopo che avete fatto gli esercizi, quelli semplici del vostro libro, almeno alcuni di voi l'hanno fatto, oggi volevo darvi alcune dritte su come realmente presentare gli Stati Uniti. Ecco, ho preparato per voi una, una guida, and now we can start the introduction to USA. So of course it's very difficult. How can we summarize such an enormous country, a nation, in a few minutes? Is it possible or impossible? Depends. Depends on the point of view of your starting. If you wanted to introduce the United States from a geographical point of view, or from a historical point of view, or social or economic, or even all of these. So I'd rather start with an introduction of United States that I gave you as a photo on the board of your platform, and it sounds like that. The USA is a land of great natural beauty. Its variety landscapes range from the frozen lands of Alaska to the volcanic islands of Hawaii, from the gentle slopes of the Appalachian to the prairies of the Great Plains, from the high snow covered mountains of Colorado to the sandy beaches of the Pacific coast, from the fertile plains and wet field of the Midwest to the deserts of the Southwest. Vast, almost empty spaces contrast with densely populated urban areas, located mainly along the coasts and borders. The USA has a great variety of climates and also serious natural hazards. Hundreds of tornadoes and hurricanes hit the country every year, racing from the sea or the land, destroying everything in their way. So it sounds like a huge, enormous land with a variety of climate, a variety of landscape, and if you have to imagine how huge, how enormous is the land, this territory, you have to consider that from the eastern coast, that is the coast on the facing on the Atlantic Ocean here, to the west coast, that is on the Pacific Ocean, there are more or less 6 hour difference. So if you fly from New York here to San Francisco here, it takes you 6 hour difference. So it's very wide. It's very wide. And what we usually know about United States is a sort of mythology. There is the myth of big cities, million of people working, and modernity, skyscrapers, natural beauties that are very stunning in this country. But we must remember that actually what we know about the United States is what is concentrated in the big capital cities and metropolis, well known metropolis, such as, for instance, I have listed here some of them: New York, Washington, Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, Orlando, New Orleans, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Kansas City, Detroit, Houston, Portland, Seattle. All most of these names are popular and known, But what is really unknown is this kind of landscape that is the heart of the United States in the Midlands, the country in an enormous area that is called Midwest. Here is the Midwest. You can see here in the map. We have mainly, apart from the 48 states, 50 states actually, with Alaska and away. Alaska is in the north, in the northern part of Canada, that now is uh, annexed to the United States, like the away. You can see this vast territory. It can be divided into one, two, three, four, five areas. The East Coast, where are concentrated the original 13 colonies that were the original United States of America after the Independence War, and they are divided into two parts: New England, New England, and the Mid-Atlantic states. Then there is the South, that is mainly an agricultural area where were concentrated the harvest of cotton, tobacco, coffee, and where that is the most conservative part of USA, and where mostly they were mostly used slaves, black people as workers in the fields, and that were also the cause of the Civil War, American Civil War of secession between northern states and southern states after the liberty of slavery declared by Abraham Lincoln. And here there is you can recognize the peninsula of Florida, and there is also New Orleans. It is a land rich of rivers. The Mississippi is flowing here, the longest river in USA. Then there is the Midwest. The Midwest, it's also the biggest center of agriculture, intensive agriculture in USA, and where the pioneers, I mean, the Europeans, the immigrants, the Europeans arrived and pushed away the local inhabitants that were the Indians. So it is the territory where there were the famous Indians wars. And here there are the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains. This is territory very fertile. Okay, and even here it flows the Mississippi River, and there is an area rich of lakes, the Great Lakes, that is also in this industrial area, but mostly it's agricultural. Then there is um, the southwest, that is characterized by stunning natural beauties such as the Grand Canyon and the Monument Valley. It is an area mostly desertic, and we have seen these images in famous Western films. It is also an area where there are located most of the Indian Americans colonies reserve. It is an area very dry and desertic. And then we have the west. The west is from the Rocky they are also known as the Rocky Mountain states, okay, and the Pacific states. As you can see in this line, we have in this coast, that is the Pacific coast, the west coast, we have few states, okay, and the most known, of course, is California, the states of California, that is worldwide known as the country of Los Angeles and Hollywood's movie industry. Um, it is an area. All this is an area that where one fourth, two fourth of the population speak in Spanish, because they were originally California belonged originally to Mexico and then was property of USA, and most of the family are descendant of Mexican families. Okay. Um, what else we can say? So we have an enormous variety of landscapes, and if we speak from a touristic point of view, we can say that going to the USA, we have two destinations to explore, or um, the the land the landscapes and the urban skylines, because in addition in all this enormous territory we have beautiful and modern cities, such as that I listed you before. um, there are many phases, yes, many phases, and through these many phases, we can in some way sum up the United States. But it is very difficult. What I want to underline here is what I like most is that we can't find the real soul of USA in the big cities, but suburb in the suburb and in the countryside, because most of the Americans that are the active producer of the economy, that is mainly based on agriculture, not only on industries, but first of all on agriculture. So they lived in the countryside, they live in the midlands, in the inlands, and this kind of landscape with kilometers and kilometers of corns cultivated in cornfields is the the most used landscape that you can see there. Okay, so then you have what else can we say? It's difficult, really difficult, but we can analyze. We can analyze an introduction of USA through some keywords. The keywords that I underlined here are land of opportunity, land of freedom, land of contradictions, land of immigrants, multiracial land, land of the American dream, land of contrast, leadership land. Okay, so uh, why and another keyword is the American dream. Yes, because the new world, they were so called once, the new world. The conquest of this new world started, of course, after the discovery of the new continent. And I wrote here the date if you don't remember. um, from in 14 yes here in 1492 there was the discovery thanks to Columbus, and in that way, in that date, from since that date, uh, the Europeans started a sort of colonization of this land. That obviously they were already inhabited, but they arrived there hoping to find new things. But firstly, they went there not to live there, but to exploit the country, to take whatever they can and bring back to their country in Europe. That was the politics of Queen Elizabeth I, because Queen Elizabeth I in the 16th century, she encouraged this kind of exploration, and because they brought richness to the countries. They brought new things. They brought new plants. They brought treasures, and we can remember that the first colony, the first settlement, it was not a colony at that time. They didn't call that. They called settlement. They named this first British settlement Virginia in honor to the Virgin Queen, and that was the first settlement. The state Virginia still exists up today, and it is here in New England. In fact, can you answer no, ask yourself why this part of the East Coast is called New England? Is called New England because the country and the landscape remembered to the colony the British countryside, the English countryside, and New England is also the heart of the history of USA. This history started with the 13 first colonies situated in this area along the Atlantic coast, and they had a relationship of import export with the United Kingdom. But the United Kingdom put heavy taxation on the export of tea and coffee. So, at a certain point, the um, the colony refused to pay a heavy taxation, and in July the 4th, 1776, they declared the independence. The independence that was a sort of revenge against the British government, and it was the starting point of the birth of a nation. Okay, but at any rate, the history of United States is a very recent history if we compare their history to the European continent history. So the real history, the very history of USA starts in 1776, and it's all we can say. And from that date, they encouraged the arrivals of immigrants from Europe, but not only from Europe, later even from China and South Asia, but at the beginning from Europe, okay? And and USA have always been regarded as a land of freedom, the land of opportunity, the land where a poor, where a homeless could have a house, could have a work, a job, or could become rich in a few days, in a few period, in a short period. And this is also called and remembered as the American dream. The American dream is here. Um, you have here a description of what is the American dream. It is the dream of reward, the dream of the equality, of democracy, the dream of everybody that can have success in the life, thanks to uh, his hard work. In some way, it is like this, but because if you think, for instance, that a young man like Zuckerberg, the inventor of Facebook, was a young boy and now is a millionaire, or Steve Jobs, that was a genius of computers, and he became a billionaire. So you can really say that if from nothing to you can become a very rich man in. So you can say that USA can give you opportunities of reward. It is, yes, it is a land of freedom of speech, freedom of worship. You can practice every religion. In fact, there is not a national religion in USA. Um, a freedom from needs, freedom from fears. Yes, it is a dream. It is a dream, and most of the Americans still think that that could can happen, must happen. Okay, they are proud to belong of this. To this nation, they are very proud to be Americans, but we must remember that it is also a land of contrast. Okay, a land of contrast, because if you go to the big cities, you can see the facade that is a very modern, rich, and clean city, and the background with the hundred of homeless that are sleeping on the streets, on the stations. Okay, um, it's a land of democracy and fair opportunities. But for a long period, the black people, or the so-called American black people, did not have the same rights as white people. And there was a long struggle, again, between white rights and black rights. And of course, it was not a law made by Abraham Lincoln that abolished the slavery that ended this sort of injustice. So, contradiction in the landscape, contradiction in culture, contradiction in rights. Very, very difficult countries, so enormous, so different, but still unite. We have 50 states, each with its own laws, and governator, um, that is like a sort of president, but all of them, all of these states, they are under the rule of the president of USA, and even the way a president is elected is very articulated. It's very difficult to deal with. Okay. Um, what can we say? Yeah, I have just put down here some some sentences, some key points, some key words to speak about the United States. But um, I don't know. You have to find out which of these is what you want best to dip in. Um, so I this is my idea about. You have here even two links on YouTube that are in English and is an introduction. They both are introduction to USA, made by an American. And of course, what we are most interested in is introducing USA from a touristic point of view. But from a touristic point of view, we must include all of these. We must know a bit of history of the country. We must know a bit of geography of the country, and we also must know some social habits or the economic place of USA and the world. And above all, we must suggest the most popular natural attractions, okay, and the most popular cities. So, as you can see, it is an hard work that I advise you to do. I hope having been helpful for you, but if it is, I will do it again in another way, so you can introduce USA in hundred of ways, hundred of ways. Bye bye for now.